You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. He is Brad Logan from Logan Digital Media, Inside the Rebels. Basically, anybody that is everybody in Mississippi, Brad Logan helps them out. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, Stephen. Big day, or big week, I should say, as we kind of turn the page on college football.
Yeah, it's here. It's finally here. We have willed this moment to happen ever since Ole Miss got off the field against Penn State, and now it is finally here.
And oddly enough, I saw one of the prognosticators, Matt Leinart on Fox Sports, last night did his pick 12 of college football playoff teams. Ole Miss was one of them, and guess who Ole Miss was playing in the first round?
Penn State. It was Penn State again.
And guess who they matched up in the second round? Ohio State and Quinshon Judkins. Could you imagine?
Oh, it'd be. Oh my gosh, goodness, that'd be fantastic. I'd like Penn State to come to Oxford. Yeah. I would enjoy that. But we would. That would be a kind of a fun matchup. I'm kind of rooting for Notre Dame, by the way.
I think a lot of us are. I think a lot of us are just, yeah.
I'd like Notre Dame to come to Vaught Hemingway in December.
And this is just spitballing here. Has Ole Miss played Notre Dame since beating them in 77?
Yes, they played them in South Bend in 84. They lost to Alan Pinkett and Jerry Faust and those guys. But yeah, that was the other part of the home and home from the original thing.
I got you.
But they have not played since on the gridiron. They played in other sports, but not in football. Okay. The questions that I guess that Ole Miss fans are going to be looking for as fall camp starts is, when will Deon Smith arrive? If he will arrive, that number 6 is going to be the number and the player that I guess is the early part of camp storyline.
Yeah, I'm sure, as you know, and we'll just let the listeners and the viewers know now, it's basically at the hands of 2 classes that, from what we understand. And David Johnson of Rebels 247 reported that he spoke with Shay Hodge, and Shay basically told him it's 2 classes and he needs a specific grade in both those classes. And so that's where it stands. I mean, people can say they feel good or they feel okay, they feel, not sure. Nobody knows. It's all depending on if he gets the grade he needs in those 2 classes. That turns a wide receiver room, which is really good, into a great wide receiver room. So I think everyone is kind of on pins and needles waiting to see if he arrives on campus. And no, for anyone that's asking, he cannot participate in preseason camp unless he has those 2 classes taken care of.
Yeah, and I think once those classes are done and the grades are in, it has to go through the clearinghouse, or at least it used to. So there could be a little bit of a quick delay. So you might not see Deon Smith at fall practice until August 3rd, August 4th. That feels about the right timeline.
Well, in years past, the clearinghouse, as you can remember, Stephen, being in the business, sometimes they would wait 3-4 weeks. I don't think we'll see anything like any type of delay like that with Deion. I think it would be a small delay, but there will be a little bit of a delay. Once word kind of leaks out that he's done what he needed to in the classroom, you'll have a little bit of a delay, and then he will join the team. And he's going to join a wide receiving corps, Stephen, that I have as one of the best in the country. And simply because Juice Wells, we know he's 100% ready to go, the transfer out of South Carolina. You've got Trey Harris as one of the top eligible, draftable wide receivers in the country upcoming. You've got Jordan Watkins, who has solidified himself as a folk hero, if you will, playing injured last year with the broken hand and even being put into the game as a punt returner when he didn't have any feeling in his hand because they didn't trust anybody else. And then you've got people like Caden Lee, who I think is going to be a standout receiver this year for Ole. And then everybody was talking about Aiden Williams last year. There's no could have come out and did anything like everyone was expecting him to do. So he's another receiver that nobody's talking about that I heard had a really good summer. So it's a stacked wide receiver room and one that I'm excited to see, and absolutely one of the best in the country.
Now, one of the topics that I have gone over on my show in recent weeks about the wide receiver room and about this offense in general is the whole purpose of everything that Ole Miss has done in the transfer portal and overall is to remove double teams from Trey Harris, because I think Trey Harris is the best wide receiver in the country. He was the number one wide receiver from PFF going against single coverage a year ago. So that makes sense that they would try to make it to where he had to get single coverage more of the time. So that's the reason for Deon Smith. That's the reason for Juice Wells. That's the reason they went so hard in the running back room. Do you think that Ole Miss did enough in the offseason to help out Trey Harris, to make him the focal point of this offense?
I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, you just look at the total picture that is the offense for Ole Miss and what they did from an offensive line standpoint. Number one, holding on to all the talent they had last year. And number two, going to the portal and getting two of the best offensive linemen from the runner-up national championship game in Washington, between Buello and the other transfer out of Washington. Not to mention, you've got Diego Pounds that came in from North Carolina. You've got Jerquan Scott that came in from Southern Miss. So you've got an offensive line unit that's as good or better than Ole Miss has had in quite some time. You've got a running back room that, Quinshon Judkins, you and I talked about that pre-production here. He left and goes to Ohio State. What's Ole Miss do? They just go to the portal and get a running back that's very much a system running back in Henry Parrish Jr. out of Miami. You put him up against Ulysses Bentley, and then all of a sudden you go to the portal and you get a running back, and I get him confused with Trey Amos.
Rashad Amos, and he's kind of a bruiser. So you get that punch of 1-2 there. Not to mention Logan Diggs. We don't know if we'll see him or not, maybe until, I don't know, maybe the Arkansas game. But all points that everything that we've heard, he's had a really good summer workout, and he's coming along as projected. So I don't think we'll see him early in the season, but there is a chance we can see him at the back half of the season. That's 5 deep at running back. Now, to answer your original question, they're so deep at wide receiver, and if you can get a burner like a Deon Smith, you get Wells, Smith, Lee, Watkins, and they start lighting it up. There's no way you can double team Trey Harris. You're going to get burned on the other side of the field. So I think the best way for Ole Miss to loosen up defense is be very good running the football. Lane Kiffin and this Ole Miss team led the SEC in rushing a couple of years ago. They can get back to it this year. And by opening up those running lanes, does nothing but brings those safeties and linebackers in and allows you to go up top and hit the burners down the field and lob it up to a Trey Harris, who we've seen him go up and get it with 1-2 hands. It doesn't matter. He's easily, if not the best wide receiver in college football this year. Yeah, and we should not leave out Caden Prieskorn and Daquan Wright. And
right, yeah, that's yet another option for Jackson Dart. You're right.
Those are going to have just as much of a role. And Jordan Rogers, during SEC Media Days, I don't know if you caught this, mentioned that Ole Miss is going to potentially go to a lot of 5 wide receiver sets this season. And that makes sense with this wide receiver unit. Now, they're not saying that there's going to be 5 wide receivers on the field. Do not hear him say that. He wasn't talking about personnel groupings. He was talking about formation. So while Ole Miss goes fast, you might see a situation where with a Ulysses Bentley and with a Caden Prieskorn, that they all get split out wide and Jackson Dart just kind of gets to go to work. That's the advantage, I think, of these weapons and having a year 3 starting quarterback.
Yeah, and another thing Jordan Rogers said is that he believes the front runner for a Heisman Trophy is Jackson Dart. This is someone that played at Vanderbilt, had a really good collegiate career, and, of course, works for the SEC Network, is on SEC Saturday Night. So he's someone that's played in the league, that's followed the league. So people like that to give that kind of opinion kind of show up to me. And no disrespect to media, their opinion I don't think is quite as, I guess you could say, appreciated as much as someone that's played in the league. The point I'm trying to make is that Jackson Dart was not recognized by any of the preseason polls for all SEC quarterback, unless I'm mistaken. I didn't see his name. But then I hear people that have played the game mention his name. I hear draft analysts talk about him and about how they project him at the next level. Those are the type things that I listen to. And so when I heard Rogers say that, it piqued my interest. And he talked about going so many wide. I think all that does is open up running lanes, honestly. If you go 5 wide, that's 5 defensive backs that you've got to throw into the game, unless you're going to use one of your outside linebackers to cover a tight end. And then that allows you to run the football and run this Ole Miss offense better. So, that would not surprise me to see Ole Miss do that instead of packing everything down with their tight end. But one thing that I don't think Caden Prieskorn gets enough credit for is his blocking ability. So maybe not, putting himself out wide, just stand him up at tight end and allow him to be another blocker if you're looking for short yardage. But he is going to be such a target for Jackson Dart throwing the football, and Wright has been a terrific pickup for Ole Miss as well. So I'm excited to see what they can do.
Yeah, and Caden Prieskorn, do not make the mistake of thinking that he's just he's a true two-way tight end. He is an excellent run blocker. Just because he came into Memphis whenever he was going through recruiting or whatever as a quarterback, it's kind of a Dawson Knox type situation with him, but he's a really good football player. Now, mentioning Jackson Dart before we go to commercial, I do want to get your opinion on this. Jackson Dart, if he goes to chalk, okay, let's say Ole Miss goes 10-2 this season. They win all the games they're favored in. They lose the 2 games that right now that they're underdogs in. Jackson Dart has a typical progression as a year 3 quarterback. You're looking at a quarterback that, on my show, I've talked about this. He has a chance to have about 90 to 95% of every quarterbacking record, from total offense to all of that stuff. He will leave Ole Miss the winningest quarterback in the history of the school. This is a major on the field at this point year for Jackson Dart. Everything's in front of him. I mean, statues, retired numbers, all of that is in the future for him if he just performs this season.
And gets the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many people, and maybe I'm in the minority here, assume that Ole Miss gets in the playoff at 10-2. I think it all depends on who Ole Miss beats and who Ole Miss loses to. I think there's an opportunity that Ole Miss is up against other programs that are also 10-2. And it's going to be left up to decision makers. And Ole Miss needs to try to get away from that. And I think if they can beat LSU on the road, Stephen, I really like Ole Miss's chances of going 11-1. And that means that gives themselves a chance to either lose to Oklahoma or Georgia at home. And I'm not so sure that I think Ole Miss beats Georgia at home this year. Now, if Ole Miss goes 10-2, loses to maybe Oklahoma or LSU on the road, and one of those wins is Georgia, I think that gets them in the playoff. Or if you lose to a South Carolina on the road, but yet you beat a Georgia at home, that maybe not be as star-struck by some of the committee members. But there's a lot of stuff at play here. And one thing I just think that it's going to be you're in a bit of a danger zone if you finish 10-2 and you don't win the right games or lose the right games, if you will. But just about to back to Jackson Dart, if he takes Ole Miss to the playoff, breaks all these records, you're talking Eli territory. And that is territory to where no one has really gotten to. We've seen Chad Kelly get really close winning the Sugar Bowl. We've seen Matt Corral get really close, seen him come out of the tunnel against Auburn and everybody kind of rallying around him, playing on one leg. Matt Corral's in a league of his own. Bo Wallace beating Alabama at home, and Chad Kelly beating Alabama on the road. Those were big moments in Ole Miss history. But you see Jackson Dart take this team to a playoff. He's going to eclipse Eli Manning. If they can do the really unthinkable with college football and win a national championship, he may be ahead of Archie Manning.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I talk about all the time with him. This season, everything is in front of this guy. He can do everything. Every goal is attainable for him. And this is a season that Ole Miss fans, honestly, they're not really accustomed to because there's certain things that are just outside their reach. But this year, I mean, everything's there. Ole Miss is the number 6 betting favorite by FanDuel to win the national championship this year. Jackson Dart is the number 3 or 4 betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy by FanDuel this year. Every goal is in front. I think the busiest person during this fall camp might be the graphic maker as all these watch lists come out, because there's going to be Ole Miss players all over them.
I've taken a little bit of grief on social channels by people saying that I'm saying that Ole Miss has an easy schedule. That's not exactly what I said. What I said is they have a schedule that's very much conducive to winning. And what I mean by that is it's laid out perfectly. You start off the season with 3 or 2 very winnable games, really 4, but I'm talking about Wake Forest is on the road. Jim Grove's going to have a pretty good team. He lost a lot last year to a big senior class, but you go
It's
on the
Dave
road.
Dave Clawson. You said Jim
Dave
Grove.
Clawson. I keep calling him. Yeah, I'm living in the past. Dave
Yeah.
Clawson is going to have a really good team. The thing about it is they lost a lot, but it's an opportunity for Ole Miss to play a team on the road in one of the power conferences in the ACC. So it's a good opportunity to kind of get ready for the SEC season. You come home, you play Georgia Southern, you should win that one handily. You open up the SEC season with Kentucky, another road game at Carolina, then at LSU. It lays out perfectly for Ole Miss. I'm not saying those games are easy. I just think the schedule lays out perfectly for Ole Miss to finish, 11-1, 10-2. I think it's a really good opportunity. How you have those games at LSU, Oklahoma at home, at Arkansas, Georgia at home, at Florida, and then Mississippi State. That's a perfect schedule laid out for this team with some bye weeks worked in there. And it's an opportunity for Ole Miss to, I think, a chance to finish 11-1. Absolutely.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and listen every day. When we come back, we will start talking a little bit about defense and transfers and some of the question marks that might exist on that side of the ball. But first, it's summertime, which means it's barbecue season. So stock up on all your grilling favorites. Earn cash back on every purchase when you use Ibotta. So you won't have to choose between burgers and hot dogs. You can get them both. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn hundreds of items on groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. So you can make sure you are beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. You can save on over 2,400 brands or shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCollege. The most anticipated Ole Miss season is upon us, and some great games are on the schedule. Fuel up with them with Factor's no prep, no mix meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for the season thanks to a menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor Fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes or less. No matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy the nutritious, great-tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart your new healthy routine. So what are you waiting for? They have 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every single week. So make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. No shopping, no prepping, no cooking, no cleaning up. Enjoy effortless support for your lifestyle. Choose 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50, all one word, and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box or plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOn50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV. In the free Fire TV channels app, Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. 2 more channels are going to be launched in the streaming service world. There's going to be college sports and NFL. You'll see yours truly on the college sports channel as well. So as we come back, Brad just got up, but we'll get back to him in just a second. Ole Miss is in a situation going into this season that's interesting defensively. When you look at what they do defensively, this is going to be different. They've added Walter Nolan, they've added Princely and Yellen, they've added Chris Hardy, Key Lawrence, Lewis Moore, those guys, Yam Banks. With all the transfers on the defensive side of the ball, we have proof of concept. We know that they're good players. I think the question is whether or not they can get them to gel in a 28-day period to get ready for Furman and into the SEC season whenever that gets here.
Yeah, defensively, I'm looking at one position. That's defensive back. I mean, I don't think there's really any questions with the defensive line. We've seen on paper and on the field what they can do. We've seen so many of these transfers that have come in with Walter Nolan, Prince Yellen, and so many others. The defensive line is three group deep. I mean, this is the deepest defensive front Ole Miss has had maybe in its history. I guess we could argue back in '93 when it had the number one defense. Linebacker looks to be in great shape as well with the leading tackle from Arkansas transferring in, Chris Pupal. Defensive back, Stephen, not to say that I'm worried about that position. I do think there are issues to where we haven't seen Trey Amos on this team that transfer in. You've got Isaiah Hamilton, Trey Washington, John Saunders, and then some other transfers that have come in. I had a chance to look back and on the previous show with David Johnson, one of the podcasts I do is we talked about the defensive backfield and how many points and how many passing yards they gave up to Texas A&M last year, to LSU, to Tulane, for the lack of a better word. And I just think that was problematic. And I think until we see some improvement on the field, I do think that is a bit of a cause of concern. So something I think Ole Miss fans will be looking forward to. I'll look forward into fall camp and the opportunities we get to see practice and to see some scrimmages, to see how that defensive back field looks, and to see if there's maybe some new faces that step up that we haven't talked about, because I do think they're going to have to improve from last year.
Yeah, last year or last spring, they advertised the heck out of Trey Amos and Trey Harris going against each other. So you have to assume that Trey Amos is going to be the number one corner for Ole Miss going into the fall. The question is, on the other side, is it going to be Isaiah Hamilton? Is it going to be Brandon Turnage? Is it going to be Chris Graves, who took a step from year one to year two? Is it going to be Cedric Beavers, the Mississippi JUCO cornerback that turns out to be a really good player, which as an Ole Miss fan, nobody's surprised when that happens. I think the cornerback 2 is going to be a major storyline in the early part of camp and as the Furman game gets closer.
It's definitely something to monitor. And I think fans that followed the team last year saw that there were some breaks in coverage. And I think, too much is made of, well, this team gets to face this high potent offense in practice. But I do think it does play a factor into this year because Ole Miss has so many weapons on offense that I do think it will be a great opportunity for this defense to improve during preseason camp to face a team like Ole Miss, Ole Miss's offense every single day to improve. So while I do think that's played up a lot, I do think it will prove to be a big opportunity for that defense to improve this year.
And let's talk about the specialists for a little bit since we're kind of going into fall camp starting tomorrow. The kicker, Caden Davis, has returned. He's a very, very good field goal kicker and kickoff man. Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels are lucky to have him. Frazier Mason, the punter, is back. Punting has been a problem at times. He's had a couple of really good games, but that is a question mark going into this season. Return Jordan Watkins, possibly. Who do you think is going to be returning kickoffs?
I don't know. We've seen, before he transferred, Henry Parrish returned some kickoffs. I think we could possibly see him. I think Caden Lee would be someone that would be sure-handed. But I think punt returns, we'll originally see Jordan Watkins because, he's trusted so much, and not so much in a return aspect, but handling the football, because they had issues last year, even when he was out with a broken hand, couldn't find anyone that couldn't secure the football. I think kickoff return is an opportunity for a third and fourth team running back or a third and fourth team defensive back or a wide receiver, an opportunity to return some kickoffs. But I think you'll see the usual suspects no one's going to jump out at you. But I think a Henry Parrish would be someone I would put back deep, to begin with on kickoff return.
Yeah, and punt returns, it is important to realize that Jordan Watkins was almost forced back into a little bit of action with a broken hand for fielding punts. You mentioned they had trouble finding people to replace him fielding punts. They tried Dayton Wade against Auburn. That didn't work. And all of a sudden, Jordan Watkins was back there catching punts with a broken hand. Yeah. Now, your boy, David Johnson over at Inside the Rebels talked about something that was a little bit interesting on his message board. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago or something like that. I forget the timeline. I think his name is Micah Davis. He's a wide receiver out of Utah State. Utah State receivers got the ability to go into the transfer portal, even though it is this late in the year because they changed coaches, I think, at the end of July. So their transfer portal window is open. David Johnson said this guy was a name to watch. So I did some research on this guy. This guy was a punt returner at Utah State. Maybe Lane Kiffin looked at a situation that he had with Jordan Watkins. If something happens to him, he wanted somebody that was going to be sure-handed back there with the experience returning punts. You think that makes sense? Why would Micah Davis make sense for this Ole Miss team?
And he would be eligible this year, correct?
Mm-hmm. He would be eligible immediately.
Well, I mean, if you're Lane Kiffin, you're always looking for the next weapon. And he very well could be someone that could help on offense. He could also be someone that could help you at punt return. If you didn't want to put Jordan Watkins back there again, I just think Caden Lee is someone that I just think just could play.
He's a good player.
He could play a big part in special teams for Ole Miss. I've heard so many rave reviews about his summer and about how much he's really taken a step forward. So, but yeah, I mean, I think Lane Kiffin and his staff are always looking for the next weapon, and the transfer from Utah State absolutely could be that.
Yeah, it's just really interesting. I guess, Lane Kiffin is never a person he has good enough talent in any room. We learned that about the quarterback room a year ago. We learned that about the defensive back room this year. They're going to add whenever they need to add. It's never good enough. So do not be surprised when they bring somebody in, and they're not bringing somebody in because something is wrong. They're just bringing somebody in to bring somebody in. So Brad, tell everybody before we go, what is going on with what is it, fan camp? Is that what y'all are calling it? David Johnson. Yeah,
we've linked it on our social channels. We're going to 4 spots throughout Mississippi, and we're going to come to the people, kind of like you did in South Mississippi or Central Mississippi. And we're coming to Van Cleve, Ocean Springs, to the Shed. We're coming to Ridgeland, to the Keg House. We're going to Marigold in Cleveland. And, of course, we're going to OK Magooey in Oxford. And we're trying to kind of blanket the state so fans can come out and talk about Ole Miss football. Katie Hill's going to be he's going to be with us over in Cleveland. May be able to be with us down in Ocean Springs. That's where he's from. And he's going to have his book there available. He's going to be able to sign it for you. And so we're excited that KD is going to be here. He's a phenomenal speaker. And so we've got some other surprises we're not going to talk about. So maybe some former players and some other guests that are coming. So we're also going to be the Grove Collective will be on hand at a couple of the events to talk about the latest on what fans can do to be a part of the Grove Collective. And we're excited that the College Corner store is going to partner with us and do some door prizes and just kind of one of those things to where we did it last year in Oxford and we had to shut the door off because the fire marshal told us we couldn't take any more people. So next year we'll just take it across the state. And the response has been fantastic. But you can just go to our social channel at Rebels247 or at Brad Logan COTE, both those on Twitter. And you can see the flyer and you can actually buy online tickets. We're not going to take tickets at the door, advanced tickets only for this event. So we're excited about it.
Yeah, and on my side of the house, the Locked On Ole Miss Insiders program that we've launched, the texting service, we're running a promo. The next 30 people that subscribes using promo code FALLCAMP, all one word, to the texting program. The link is down in the description. You'll get the next 3 months for $1 a month. The best part, it also comes with a 14-day free trial, and we're going to add perks on it throughout the season. And honestly, it should be a future thing of college sports coverage. So check that out. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But Brad, what do you got going on this week besides the fan camp? And tell everybody.
Yeah, I'm excited that Max Out Sports, my role there is continuing to expand. I'm going to be co-hosting a podcast that will be live streamed and put on Apple and Google Play, but there'll be a video element to that. And so our first episode will be airing very soon. We have Ole Miss Athletic Director Keith Carter, where we'll talk about a ton of stuff revolving around Ole Miss. And, of course, everybody's excited about the big upcoming football season. WFCA continue to work with the folks down in French Camp. We got a lot going on with junior colleges and with high school football, and then getting the schedule ready for high school football Friday nights. It's going to be a big season this year in Mississippi, and we've got some really good games upcoming for you on WFCA and also on Max Out Sports, still doing play-by-play for them, and excited about what we can do for them. And then, of course, we got our two podcasts, Red and Blue Crew with David Johnson in coordination in conjunction with Rebels 247 Inside the Rebels, and then the Believe in Ole Miss podcast is where I kind of do that on my own and get some guests, and really enjoy doing that podcast as well.
Now, Brad, you left it off on Tuesday nights. You're going to be joining me on Locked On.
I was leaving that up to
Yeah.
you. There you go.
Going to have it, and the post game show at Ole Miss football games. We're going to try and get you on the post game.
We're working on that. Yeah, we're going to do something. Don't know what we're doing yet, but just stay tuned for that.
Yeah, we still have a little bit of time to get it ironed out. But man, we got a lot of stuff going on. So, and you sound like you're going to be crazy busy for the next 5 months.
Yep, looking forward to it. It's kind of, you talk to anybody that works in this business, it's a labor of love, and I mean that. And it's something that's a lot of fun. And so I'm excited to be a part of it and always enjoy coming on the show.
All right, Brad, thank you very much, buddy. And we'll talk to you later.
Yes, sir.